All right, so let's start standing as usual. And we're going to start with the head and neck. So let's gently take the neck into a side stretch, gently side to side. And I like to plant an idea now and then. If we, through some of the exercises, it won't be applicable to all, but start thinking about how we initiate a movement, whether it's kind of proximally or distally, further from the center or close. It has quite an impact on how we use the muscles. So I'm going to be weaving in that thought into a few exercises. So even in this side to side movement, we can kind of flow and melt side to side, or we can think from the top of the head and draw a big arc up and over. So obviously when we think about engaging right from the tip, from the furthest point, we're engaging muscles along the whole chain. So it makes us different movement. So not better or worse, just a different movement. So we do the same with the chin into the chest. Initially we can just roll the head forwards and almost peel it back. So I found this is a bit more of a supportive way of mobilizing the neck. But then we can think about length and leading from the top of the head and drawing a big circle, long neck as the chin comes forwards and then tips back. We might feel there's a little bit more a sense of this with the arms. So let's take the arms, the shoulders forwards, up to the ears, to the back wall, squeeze the shoulder blades together, and then shoulders depressing right down away from the ears. Let's have one more like that. Shoulders coming forwards, up, chest open, shoulders back, and then down. Now, if we think about stretching to the fingertips, let's press the arms forward, stretching into the fingers. How much deeper, how many more muscles are involved? If we draw the fingers up to the ceiling and lift the shoulders right up to the ears and really out wide, so stretching out wide and back, and then using the fingertips to reach down to the floor. So a good movement and just a different way of looking at it. So we're stretching all the way up to the fingertips. So keep those fingers reaching out wide. More or less drawing a circle now because we're reaching through the fingers. And we can add on the head. We're adding the shoulders forwards. Last one here. All right, let's just circle the hips. No unusual ways of looking at this. Let's just feel a nice stretch on the tops of the legs. Take it all the way around. And then changing directions. Let's have a slightly different look at how we mobilize the knee and the ankle. So if we start to think about tracing the outline of the foot. So let's start with the left foot. We can draw the outline of the foot, no pressure on the foot. See, I'm just drawing the outline of the foot. So it's just a nice way of moving the knee and the ankle. And then side to side, but in this sweeping movement, side to side. Again, no strain on the knee, the ankle. You can hold a wall if this is tricky. And then forwards and backwards, toes up to the ceiling, glide along the floor. And then the top of the foot, that stretch from the top of the foot, gliding forwards and backwards. So often we'll think about just mobilizing the knee and then circling the ankle, just feeling the whole chain involved as we work through the foot. Give the leg a shake and we'll take it to the other side. So first of all, just finding the outline of the foot. How often do we carefully, mindfully roll out to the outside of the foot over the toes? We take that outline in both directions a couple of times. And then let's sweep the foot side to side. So here we're very gently mobilizing, working into the stabilizers, the knee, the ankle, working on your balance if you've got nothing to hold on to, and then forwards and backwards. Allow a little bit of weight onto the top of the foot at that point. You really get a good stretch through the front of the foot. And then let's shake out the leg and move on. All right, next. If we think about a roll down and then a flat back fold, this is another way of looking at if we're peeling ourselves off a wall, we engage the core and keep the abdominal muscles pulled in tight as we roll down to mobilize the spine, but the core stays strong throughout. Same as we rebuild the spine and come up to standing, core strong, one section of the spine loading at a time. But then changing that so that we hold the hips, find that plumb line, chin tucked into the chest, core strong, flat back, and think about keep creating length through the spine. So different kind of fold. Obviously a deep stretch in the backs of the legs, length right into the top of the head, until we come to our furthest point. Engage the core, press into the floor all the way back up. Let's have one more like that because we don't do that one so much. And let's try and lead with the top of the head, as if there's a string on the top of your head, pulling you, finding that length. So the whole chain, posterior chain involved here, and the core working extra hard. And all the way up. Great. Let's have the legs wide. For a rotation for the spine, we can peel ourselves off that back wall and come into that twist down to the ankle, and then rebuild the spine. Let's take that to the other side. Twist for the spine, stretch for the legs. Wakening up the body. Let's have one more set like that, and then we'll go for a stretch through the fingertips. I always think that if we can keep finding new ways of moving the body, the more ways the better. For young, healthy, supple muscles. So this time, let's take the arms out wide. And again, reaching into the fingertips. We turn, trying to keep that length, keep the longest possible spine. And now the fingers are reaching beyond those opposite toes. Reach and stretch and lengthen. Then leading with those same front fingertips, draw a big arc all the way back to our starting point and the other side. So a very different way of taking that twist. Reach into the fingertips, reach beyond the toes and lengthen. Leading with the fingertips to come back up. So if we keep the toes gripping the floor, really strong, active through the legs, you can quite quickly feel how much more energy is being expended, how many more muscles are involved in this movement rather than the gentle flow. Now the gentle flow version, of course, has its place for finding that softening and release in muscles. Let's have the next one as our last set. Reaching your last biggest stretch to the side. Pressing into the floor, core strong, rebuilding the spine last time, or even yourself out if we're not in sync for this. Wonderful. So coming back up, maybe feeling a little bit longer, we're going to apply those principles for one last thing, standing up. The balancing stick, if we place weight into one foot and point and lengthen through the back leg, steeple top fingers, index fingers up to the ceiling, slightly in front of the face. So we're not straining back here. We want to keep the abdominal strength here, drawing the ribs together. Now, before you think about hinging forwards into that kind of capital T shape, just work on lengthening from the toes at the back with that pointed foot right into the fingers over the head with those steeple top fingers, and try to just work on lengthening. Gradually we can hinge forwards, but thinking about length. So we're coming in towards this balance from a really long position so that all the muscles of the body are involved. So let's try a few round sets. I'm not interested in how far you can lower the body. It's seeing how long you can make fingertips to the toes at the back. Try and knit those front ribs together so we have the strength, almost like a hammock for the body, created with the abdominal wall strong. Reaching, lengthening, feel that length. Feel the control, that almost kind of seesaw counterbalance. navel to spine. So by thinking about length and engaging the muscles along the whole chain from the back toes to the fingertips, we'll have a lot more stability, she says, falling over. When you finish that one, have a shake out of that standing leg, shrug out the shoulders, and we'll try to the other side. So when you're ready, point the toes, tilt the pelvis, let's draw those ribs in. Try and have the other thumb on top, the one that feels a little bit strange. So arms very slightly in front of the ears. And pause here. So even if we're not coming into the full balance, we can work on pointing the toes and reaching into the fingertips, closing the front ribs. This already is really strenuous. So just as we're pushing into the floor through the standing leg, we're lengthening into the back toes. We're also stretching into the fingertips, those index fingers reaching forwards. And maybe we just make small movements, creating length with each effort, each time we're hinging forward. Where we're clasping the hands, try to keep the heels of the hands together as well, so that we're not pulling on those wrists, strong right along the arms. Maybe on the last one or two goes on this leg, and then we can shake out. Let's circle out the wrists, shake out that leg that we've been working, and we're coming down to the mat already. So you can choose whether you roll down through the spine, and maybe you're already on the mat, keen and raring to go. We'll meet on all fours. Let's just adjust the camera down so I can see you. Lovely. It's collapsing. So with the hips over the knees, shoulders over the wrists, here we are. So we're going to start with a calf stretch, extend the right leg and plant the ball of the foot, and let's just get a good calf stretch for a few breaths here. Still the neck can be long, we've still got that nice alignment of shoulders over wrists. You put as much weight into that back heel as you need to get a nice calf stretch. So because we've not done cat-cow, we're going to do cat-cow using this leg, but we'll try to keep the front ribs in and navel to spine. So we can lift, point the toes and lift the leg, not even hip height, maybe a little bit lower as we breathe in and then breath out. We're drawing the knee in between your forearms. Exhale, forehead to knee. Let's go for 6 in total, breathing into that extension, everything still strong in the core, and the exhalation, the knee comes all the way in. Shoulders down, and every time we come to that extended position, can we think about how we went through the balancing stick? So we've got the toes pointing away, top of the head drawing forwards and finding length here. Last couple here, and then we'll change the movement. See if we can go right to the end of that exhalation for an extra crunch strengthener for the core. I think we have one more on this side. And then re-extend the leg. We're tapping the leg out to the side, to the floor, drawing a big arc and across the body. So there's the movement. Again, we'll go for roughly 6, depending on the speed. So here you'll notice weight going into one hand more than the other. See if we can keep the arms straight. If possible, keep the crease of the elbows parallel to the front edge of the mat. So if that means turning the hands out slightly, that's fine. Getting a bit of heat into the glutes. Now, the next time the foot comes across the body, we're going to plant the ball of the foot in that cross position and find a nice lean into that hip. So you can look back at the toes and getting that stretch on the outside. of the straight leg hip. Pausing there to just enjoy or play around with where you can get a nice release and length. All right, one little challenge here. The leg that's behind, fully cross it behind the knee. And we can come back as if into a cow face pose. And then we're going to try a balance, coming onto the knees and lifting the arms overhead. Squeeze the glutes and lengthen. Come back towards cow face pose. Don't worry if the hips don't find the floor. And then rolling forwards, just working into a bit of a balance in this position. Lengthening overhead. And last time. Nice little stretch for the hips. And last time up into that balance. Stretching into the fingertips. And then release down. Unhook. And we're coming through the leg. So extend your other leg. Plant the ball of the foot. And feel a stretch in the calf. Lengthen the neck. Shoulders down. Breathe into the calf. And then it's that modified cat-cow. So when you're ready, lifting the leg, not too high, we don't want to curve in the spine. And the breath out, rounding the back, navel to spine, knee comes in between the forearms, exhale fully. Breathing to that extended position, think length in the body, the breath out, curving, rounding, empty the lungs. Let's just make sure we're not rolling out to the little fingers. Keeping all the fingers, tips, underside knuckles, heels of the hands engaged. We're trying to avoid any flinging here, really mindful, strong movements. At any point you need a child pose or to rest out the wrists, I completely understand. It's all fine. There's time for everything. So that arc with the foot, we'll take the leg out wide, tap the foot down, lift and draw an arc behind the other leg. Again, now every time you take that arc position, that movement, see if you can feel the leg a little bit longer. The leg knows what it's doing now, so we can check if the neck is the longest it can be. So if we're looking down at the floor between the index fingers, we probably have quite a nice long neck, chin tucked in towards the neck. It's the crown of the head, not the center, the top of the head drawn forward to the crown of the head for the nicest position in the neck. So let's get prepared for that outer hip stretch. Plant the ball of the foot across the body and lean into the hip as you look back at those toes. So a little bit of a stretch for the toes, the outer hip. Play around with where you can lean into the hip to get the best stretch. So for that cow face flow into a kneeling balance, when we place the knee and the gap at the back, we want a bit of a gap between the feet so we can start to sit back towards the heels, hopefully towards the floor, and then rolling up, finding that instability but the balance, squeezing the thighs together to reach overhead. We're only doing 3 of these. And if you feel like the cow face pose, this is just so great for your hips, feel free to just stay here and have a little shimmy of the hips and stick with this. Work a little bit deeper to come down towards the floor. Otherwise, last couple here. Make the next the last. Then we're moving on to our sides. So we've got a good chance of seeing each other. Let's lie mirrored so that you're lying on your left-hand side. Like Cleopatra, you can rest the head in the hands, point the toes, and if it's not a challenge to lift your arm and you're not swaying, you may be in a bit of a banana shape. So let's make sure the ankles, knees and hips are all in a line, and even the upper body, so we don't want to curve forward at the top. Really long, strong line. Now we'll float the top leg up, tilt the pelvis, yeah, and wobble it all over. Tilt the pelvis, engage the core, light touch through the fingertips for support. The side kick, can we lengthen through the toes as the leg comes forwards without any movement in the upper body? Now flex the foot and leading with the heel, but we're trying to go back beyond the body without bending the knee, without moving the upper body. Point and forwards. And flex to return and go back beyond the central line of the body. So we'll stick with this for a few rounds, not too many because we have a few more to come. We're going to be loading onto this hip a little bit. Give me one more set here. And then keeping the leg hovering, or have a little rest if you need to. We're externally rotating the hips. So can you see the knee and the toes then pointing a little bit up towards the ceiling? We can tap the heel down to the floor and then lift over. Not overhead unless you're very bendy. So we'll point to lift and feel length. Flex leading with the heel down. Squeeze the inner thighs together here. We're trying to avoid flinging. It's nice steady movement. Oh. So it will almost feel like you're rolling back or rolling forwards if you're right on the edge. To find that challenge. We need a slight external rotation in the hip to give us a good range of movement. One more here. Great. Have a little rest here for the hip. And we're moving on to the lower leg. Now, it's cheating if that lower leg comes forwards. Get the leg right back so it stays in line. Curl the toes up to the face. Load some weights onto this inner thigh, fingers if you can reach. And we're pulsing halfway lift to a big lift. And so not going all the way to the floor. So there's 10, 9, keep the heel to the back wall. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Point the toes, 10 rapid circles. Keep your core engaged. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, lengthen, 4, 3, 2, 1. Other way. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold the leg in that lifted position. Lengthen, point the toes. Hold, hold, hold. And soften down. Before we come on to the other side, hug the knees into the chest and have a little rock on the spine. And we're setting up on the other side. So finding that straight line. Tummy tucked, straight line. And float the top leg up. And we'll take the leg forwards with a point, flex and back. Don't forget fingertips for support. If it's too complicated, thinking about whether you're flexing or pointing through the ankle, the toes, don't worry. It's more important to think about navel in and no movement in the upper body. Point forwards if you can, lead with the heel back. Have a sensation that every time you take the leg forwards and backwards, the leg's getting longer. We're creating space in all of those joints. Make sure you're not clenching the jaw. Shoulder nice and soft. If you need a rest, let the legs rest a moment. Otherwise, we're going into that turn up. So turn up, toes, knees in that externally rotated position. And we'll lift and lower. So heel to the floor, point the toe, rise up, heel leads lowering. So hips stay stacked. Squeeze the inner thighs together here. Continuous movement, find length. Keep lifting the inner thigh up. Great. And rest the leg down. Bend in front and remember that back leg, it will want to creep forwards because that's easier. Keep the leg back in line. Flex the foot, lengthen, straight leg, halfway lift, and then pulse 10, 9, heel back, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rapid circles, doesn't matter which direction, and point 10, 9, 8, core strong, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, other way, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold it, keep it lifted, stretch the leg, hold, 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 and melt down. Brilliant. Onto your bellies. You can just rock from one hip to the other, just ease out. And let's rest the head on one hand, reach back and draw the foot into the bottom and find length in the front of the thigh. Crease at the top of the leg eliminates. Lengthen now from your ribs down the front of the body, down the front of the hip, right down to the knee. You can change the stretch by rolling the inner thigh towards the floor and again drawing the foot in, find length and a release in the inner thigh hip flexors. Outer hip, and then we've got the other leg. Slowly, gently release. Take hold of the other foot or with a strap if you can't find your foot, and just guide in towards the bottom. Feel length in the thigh. Release at the top of the leg. Finding that inner thigh stretch and outer thigh just by rolling across the hips, pressing the pubic bone into the floor. One more breath here. Brilliant. Slowly release, come onto your backs. Taking the legs up to the ceiling or bent, arms overhead. As you breathe out, engage the core and extend one leg to 45 degrees. Keep the spine imprinted, front ribs together. Breathe in to return. The breath out, press the core into the floor. And return. Last few rounds, you're in the last stretch of the class. So we're reaching overhead, if you can, just so we're finding length in the sides of the body. And again, we're reaching into the fingertips, so as many muscles in the body are working at the same time. Give me one more set and then we'll rest in Supta Baddha Konasana. So that's the soles of the feet together, the knees out wide. Here it doesn't matter if the spine arches slightly. Take a gentle rock on the back of the head, the knees swaying side to side. Nice deep breaths. And then let's take the figure four stretch. Foot to the floor, place the other foot on the thigh, knee out wide, foot flexed. And then work both sit bones back so your glutes into the floor. So external rotation of the top hip, flexed foot. Breathe into the hip, the glutes. And gently release over to the other side, plant the foot, open the hip. And then try to avoid lifting the hips up, hips down. And any sway, just to find that sweet spot. You may find it more in the hip or the glute, depending on how the side works for you. And then I invite you to take a full body stretch, reaching into the fingertips, spread the fingers, spread the toes, lengthen through one side of the body and then the other. And stay there for a couple of breaths. And there we go.